What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to give you guys some of my quick thoughts on Age of Mythology Retold. I was actually given a code for this game and thought, hey, let's fire it up. It's a busy time in the gaming industry, but you know what? This is a different kind of game for a very different, I would say, kind of crowd. I don't know if Astrobot players are playing Age of Mythology or vice versa, but I really love these type of games. I think I've said this kind of before on the channel. Like, when it comes to Total War and stuff, I'm always willing to give these games a try. I just always fall in the same trap. I play them for a few hours, I play them for a few days, depending on, which game we're talking about, but I've played like a pretty good amount of these throughout my entire life. I mean, I started playing this as early as like 8-9 years old, and these are just really fun games to me. So I just kind of want to throw that out there in terms of, like, I'm familiar to an extent, but I'm also not familiar because I've never gotten that advanced or hardcore in any of these games, but I do have like a very long history of playing them. But here, honestly, in terms of quick impressions, right? Put simply, the game's good. The game's good. Like, if you're looking for an RTS, this is a very good game. Now, actually, I got the code on Xbox, and this is interesting because, these games are absolutely best played on PC, right? But I believe in, like, the PC elitism in terms of, like, it is probably the best place to play, but my personal preference is actually console. So whenever I'm given codes or things like that are offered, I always actually default to consoles, even if maybe I shouldn't. But I thought it actually presented a pretty good, idea for these videos, right? Where it's like, okay, well, if I'm playing it on console, at least I can kind of talk about that angle of things, because I actually do think it, for the most part, is very good. I think there's only one issue I found with the controls and stuff, because, you think about the console, you think about a controller, and it just has less. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. The binding of your actual keys, right, works so much better when you have a keyboard and you're able to just, I don't know, see the menu differently, see the units, all of that kind of stuff. With console, you got to condense it. You got to have these menus that are sometimes difficult to read and maneuver, and you need to do it because you need to kind of fit everything, right? The only thing that I found with this game that kind of annoyed me with console is selecting units. And I mean, it's a somewhat big part of it, to be honest with you, but you kind of get the hang of it. Basically, you hold A, and there's a circle, like a radius, and it grows. And the only problem I would run into is, like, if you're really trying to pick just a few. So when I would spawn some peasants, I would say, hey, go mine coal, right? Or, whatever you want to do. You would try to get those two, but if somebody's right next to it, sometimes it could grab that third person. It's like, well, I only wanted two people. I didn't want a third person. And for my, limited play style, I played this game basically on easy mode just to kind of get my feet wet. I wasn't looking for a fight. I'm not, I wasn't like pushed up against the wall. I wasn't rushing basically to get things done, but it's just something you got to keep in mind depending on what you're playing it on, right? So if you're playing it on Xbox, honestly, I found it to be really good. Like, I think in terms of the frame rate and being able to handle everything, I think it actually ran extremely well. It looks beautiful. I really like the look. And the only issue in terms of UI, maneuvering, things like that, the only thing I found personally was selecting units. That's pretty much it. The rest of the game, I mean, it is what it is. This is, it's a classic RTS feel. The added part to it, right, is that mythology part, right? And to be honest with you, I didn't even know what this game was when it first got announced and it was leading into it. But, this is a game, I believe, that came out in 2002, somewhere around that time, and very popular for its time. I was 6 years old, so I didn't play it. But, this being the remaster that it is, again, things I think brought up to modern time. But that is the uniqueness, right? So you got all of these different paths. You have these different, types of gods, and you can go down those paths. And you're going to be, and each one of those gods kind of provides something a little bit different for your play style. Also, literally the different mythologies themselves are different units, is different ways of playing. Like, some of them handle things differently. Some of them, in terms of transporting materials, will transport it basically on like carriage or cart, right? Where other ones will just bring it to like a depot or something like that. So, that kind of changes up the play style because, and that, sometimes games fall into that trap. Not even necessarily a trap. That's just kind of what happens, right? You play it the same way, right? Even though it's different clans, different nationalities, different whatever. The mechanics and what you're going for, where you deposit it, how things work. It's basically the same. This game actually throws wrenches at you because something that you're very familiar doing with one, you might not do with the other. And again, like gods will give you different things. So like if you go one path one time, go the other path another time, you're going to have to change up your style based off what that god is giving you, right? In terms of kind of like rewards. So I really like that. And, again, I didn't really go all that deep. This game is, the game is basically comprised of just a couple different modes, which I actually don't mind whatsoever. It kind of keeps things concise for me. So it's got a very meaty campaign. Lots of different scenarios. I guess the only thing I found there is, like, I would really build up. I'm one of those guys that, like, literally builds an army to take on, like, a small little, like, gang. So I really go for it. I max out the population. I make sure I have, like, 10 times the materials I need. So I would do this with every story mission, and then it ends, and then you're transported to a new area, new gods, new landscape, new situation, right? Okay, well now you already have these things in place, so now you got to do this. Oh, but in the last scenario, you had to start from scratch. See, I really actually like starting from scratch. So when you give me a story mission where things are already done, it's like, oh well, I kind of would have done that a little bit differently, right? So I mean, it provides a set of challenges that I do think is fun. I think kind of gets your feet wet, especially again me being familiar but also not being familiar. I don't take these games too aggressively or too competitively. So I like to do these things kind of slow. So I think that's good because I mean it tells a pretty okay story. It gets your feet wet and you can jump around to all of these different things and just experience literally different scenarios is kind of what I would call it, but it's in the campaign mode. And then you really have multiplayer and you have just basically being able to do skirmishes, right? Kind of picking everything, picking which kind of mythology you want to follow down, what mythology you want the enemy to follow down, all these different teams. So, the game is meaty without being like there's 15 modes. I mean, hey, games with 15 modes can be pretty good too, but I think this game, and maybe because it's a remaster, right? So it's a bit of an older game, and you can still, especially in like the menus and the way that things are structured in that way, you can kind of tell this isn't a game that was developed in 2024, right? It's a game remastered in 2024, but it's not a game that was made for right now. So, you can see the age here and there, but I can respect it. I think this game is really cool. It's got a twist, like I've said, for me, Total War has kind of been my franchise that I have. I try to check out as many of those games as possible. And, and that does things to, in terms of time periods, right? Like it tries to spice things up every time using a different time period. But I think a game like this, it's got the fundamentals, it's got things I'm familiar with, and then it throws in these gods and it throws, and just the different scenarios that would present. And that kind of throws you, out of whack. And I really like it. So, again, I don't consider this a review. I also don't really consider myself like an expert on this. So, if you want an expert opinion on this game, you might want to go elsewhere. But if you want any kind of my opinion, I would say this is a really good game. I really am enjoying it. It's a game that I think I'll be going back to, over time. Probably more dead times in the gaming industry, I'll go back to it. But I'm having a lot of fun. And again, I don't actually think it's hurt all that much from Xbox. I think, if you have Xbox and you don't have a strong enough PC, and you're saying, hey, maybe I want to play it, but like, does it run well? Or is this something that even could work on Xbox? Yeah, there's some sacrifices there, but overall, I'm not saying you can't tell the difference. I think a lot of people would be able to tell the difference between playing this game on console and not, but I think it's a good time. I think it works on console enough, and I think you would be able to enjoy yourself when playing it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icons turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.